25th of September 2022. You're very welcome back. I just want to finish up on the acetylene and the brazing gases, etc., and just draw your attention to it. I think some people will be interested in this, even though they may never buy these, but it's no harm to benefit from the little bit of experience I've gained with it. And this is vintage 4B acetylene storage, and of course sales, and that's all the paper I have. I even use the same piece of paper to cut down on the environmental impact of cutting trees. And this is the Hobbyweld. Now you can go into most places, and if you are using a lot of acetylene or oxygen, the place to go is air gas. Is it air gas you call it? Whatever it is, or BOC. That's it. You see the lorries going around there. That's the place to go. It's expensive a bit, but you're getting a hell of a good product too, and they have to live as well, I suppose. But the problem with getting it off those companies, and it happens to me, is you buy your cylinder, they'll come around sometimes and change them for you, and then you're off making silage and you're doing other things, and by the time you get back to it, the rent is up, and you have to pay the rent, and you've got no value. This idea of Hobbyweld, it might be slightly more expensive, but you can leave your cylinder there provided you close it, and you needn't come back to it for ages, and you only pay for the product. But the downside of that is you pay a deposit, and it'll depend. Sometimes if they think you're a good customer, they'll maybe give you a slightly better deal on the deposit, and when you pay the deposit you get a receipt, and that means you can go back then and just replace your cylinder. And when you leave back the cylinder, if you're done with the cylinder, they'll give you your money back on it. That's what they say. The amount of times I get money back from companies is very rare, so I don't know how that'll go, but that's the deal anyway. And I suppose if you kick up enough of a racket, you will. If somebody has them hired out and he dies or something, and the widow wants the cylinders, if you see them there, look around and see can you get the receipt. He may have an account, you may know where it is. If you bring them back, you should get the money back for them. The deposit is quite, it can be about 150 and 120 and that. But for a lad, any man or any woman, you have it then for good, and you can go back with it. That's the thing. Now, the thing about it is, there's two products we look at here, and they do other things like argon gas, but the Hobbyweld comes in, here it's here. Now, I'll just show it to you there. I think you can see it there. It comes in the original, and it's 550 millimeters high. It comes in the plus, which is 895 high, and it comes in the ultra, which is 875, but it's fatter, it's wider, it's a bigger diameter. Okay, the product for the original is 8 kilos. The product for no, sorry, I'm wrong again, just hold me here. The teraweight, remember I've done that now, the weight without the product is 8 kilos for the original of acetylene. It's 17 kilos for the plus, and for the ultra is 29 kilos, and the ultra comes with built-in gauges. So you don't have to bother about a regulator. For me, I have those things, it doesn't really matter, but they're probably a wee bit more expensive. Now, the ultra, for anyone that's doing a bit of cutting, would do a bit of cutting. You could draw a good lot of the ultra. It's a big enough cylinder, but it's a pig to move about. So I'm just saying that the plus is a nice handy one, but the little original is all right. So you see them there, and that's exactly as they are. They're lovely little cylinders. You can make a little trolley for them, and they work perfectly in that way. Now, the other thing then I'm going to look at, and I'll stop here for the moment, is oxygen, because you might need oxygen, you will. Now, in the case of oxygen, there are officially 3 cylinders. There's the original, there's the plus, and they say there's the ultra, right? But my understanding of it is, and from seeing these in product, the actual difference, the height of the original is 860 millimeters, and the diameter is 140. You'll get this on the Hobbyweld website. In the case of the plus, it's high, it's 950 millimeters high, and it's 200 diameter. But the ultra is 1050 high, and it's also 200 diameter. So the diameter of the ultra oxygen is the same as between the plus and the ultra. That's different from the acetylene. And the reason it is that the ultra large, as they call it, comes with its own gauges. whereas the ultra medium doesn't. Now, I might be open to correction on that, but if you look up the product off them, you can check that yourself. One's a little cheaper than the other, and I'll just see, it's right here about the price here. Yeah, like the deposit, the recommended deposit for the oxygen original is 70 sterling, which isn't that bad. The recommended deposit for the plus is 110, and the recommended deposit for the ultra large, no, the ultra is 190. So a big difference between the two. But it seems to me that the deposit on the large oxygen or Hobbyweld cylinder includes the gauges. You're buying the gauge, you get the gauges with it, and as long as you keep it, you have the gauges. But if you leave it back, they take back the gauges, so you get back this. So you're paying that 80 euros, or sorry, 80 pounds sterling extra, because the gauges are built into the cylinder. And that can be very useful, especially around a site where they're getting a lot of hassle, right? In my own case, I have gauges, and I take great care of them, and I'm particular about them. And if I were going one, I'd be going the plus medium, because it's a bit less expensive. But I'm nearly sure they're the very same in volume. If you check it up, you can see that. Whichever you choose, you have those two. And I can tell you that the plus one, the big oxygen, there's only two. There's plenty of oxygen in it. It's absolutely perfect. Great job. It'll do everything. Because remember, you don't have to porous material or anything. Acetylene is the only gas that you have to porous material. So you have the original small then, and that's all right too. Nice bit of oxygen there too, and you can draw it out any way you want. And oxygen is useful for even you're using whatever, let it be propane or whatever else, or polypropylene or anything else. But just to show you now what they're showing here, the difference, there's a 40 pounds sterling difference in the deposit for the small and the big oxygen. That's it. Now, the other thing is, the bigger oxygen is a bit of a pig. It's a pig to pull around. I can manage it. I do manage it, but it's not for the faint-hearted. It'd be hard enough to pull up on a building site. You'd want good ropes. Whereas the small one is, if you look at the difference weight, the small one is 17 kilos tera weight, whereas the other one is 32 kilos tera weight, nearly twice the size. So that's something. And then the one with the gauges is 37 kilos. And if the falls on the gauges, now there's protection on the gauges, so I don't know how much abuse they will take. But certainly on it where there's work going on, I'd go for the one with the gauges incorporated in it, because they have protection on it and everything, and it seems to be good. For the ordinary hobby man, I'd be inclined to go for the medium one, and it's 110 euros deposit. But if your pocket is a bit light, well then go with the 70, and you can always leave it back. That's what they say. I'd say if you leave back the small cylinder and ask in exchange to get the bigger one, I'd say that accept the deposit on the small one and just make you pay the balance for the big one. I'd say that'd be no problem. Only thing I have some doubts about is them paying you back actually cash. I don't know. So I'd say that that's the situation. Now also they say that the contract, when you pay the deposit, it's you only, it's you and your name. So it might be no harm if there's other people to use it, putting in two names, Johnny Smith and Mary Riley, or Johnny Smith and Noel we'd say, it's hard to think of a name that's not all around here, Noel Gilhooly or whatever it is. So a few of them names on it, and then neither one goes in. But in actual fact, if you come in with a cylinder, they'll not refuse money. So that's the story. Sometimes they mightn't have them in stock, so you'd need to ring. Now, for the ordinary hobbyist, it's not a big deal to run out, but that's why the previous video is very important. If you're sending people out to do jobs, and you were giving them the Hobbyweld kit, you need a good stand that stand up. You can leave the oxygen on its side, no problem, but you cannot leave the acetylene. You must leave it overnight to drain down. That's very important. And there have been accidents and people killed. I think there was an accident in Australia. I don't know the facts of it, but we don't want accidents. So remember, and I can't emphasize this enough, acetylene must be kept upright. If you leave it on its side, that's all right, but you need a full 24 hours for it to come back. So you cannot throw it into the back of a van and let your men off up to Dublin to do a bit of brazing or whatever it is, or fix plumbing, and then just upright it. It can be done, and it happens, and the acetone comes out, but it's not. It's bad practice. So really what you need is tie. What I do is I have a stand, and then I tie ropes to it inside in the van so that I can always have it up. And you also want to watch if there's an accident. These are highly dangerous. These are heavy clunks of steel with a gas inside. So it's very important to have them somewhere where they're fairly rigidly tied in, where they won't pop about, and do not have them rolling back and forward in the back of a van with gauges on them. For God's sake, don't do that. I don't like preaching, but on this issue, I will preach. I'll take the liberty. With some of the vans, you can push the front seat forward, and you can put your cylinders down behind the front seat and tie them up to the top of the seat or whatever, and they can't move, and they're contained in there. Whatever you do, even an oxygen cylinder that opens would enrich the air. And if somebody lights a cigarette, you could have trouble, or a pipe or whatever. With the cylinder of acetylene, the same can happen. These are cap, your turn cap on the top. Now, the other thing about the hobby, so just be careful with that. Common sense has to be applied. Now, just there was something now I was coming into my head, and I'll just have to pause here. Yes, I've thought of it. For most BOC gases and air gas that I know of, the thing is on the top. The connector is on the top. See this here? There it's there, straight down. And so the regulators and all the taps will fit down into that. With the BOC, they're side, because they have the cap on the top. So therefore your regulator has to go in sideways, and that's all right. I'm a bit of a purist, and I like to get the proper side regulator that the gauges are up. And I had problems with suppliers who sent me out the top mounted ones instead of the other ones, and there's trouble trying to get them to pay me back or give me the proper one. Just remember that. The Hobbyweld cylinders are side entry, and the BOC used to be all top. Maybe they'll change now. I can't say that, but definitely any I've seen in recent times are definitely side entry with a spanner, a 3/4 inch spanner that opens and closes it, whereas the Hobbyweld is top done. Both systems are all right. I won't judge any. As I say, the problem with the spanner is you can put too much pressure on. The Hobbyweld, you just tighten them down by hand, and it's very good. So just remember that your gauges will be inside us. You won't see them right. I prefer to get the proper gauges. And my advice to you, if you shop around, you will. There's a crowd called Norse do supply. They're in Northern Ireland, I think, and you might get ones in the south and in Britain. But if you want to be up here and get your gauges up, to remember the cylinder, the Hobbyweld goes inside us. Your gauges have to be up here, something like this here. They have to be up like that. Whereas if you have it wrong, you'll have them sideways. You put them in sideways, you'll have them wrong. So you might as well get them right and insist on them getting them right, because they are available and they are made, your regulator and your gauges. Now, the other thing is that when I was talking there about your cylinders by weight, most regulators have a gauge that will tell you roughly how much product is inside. They'll tell you the pressure, and the pressure in the cylinder can go down a certain amount. Now, I'm not going to deal with that here. It'd be for another video. I don't actually. I do use the pressure big time for oxygen, but for acetylene, it's a thing you learn a skill for, and I can hear it when it's just exactly right. I don't go with the gauges that much, but you know how to get it right. And but yes, you can technically know how much oxygen you have left in the cylinder, what the pressure of it is in bar, and you can technically know how much acetylene based on the gauges too. Now that's something that I beg to differ. I'm not just too sure about. Somebody might comment underneath, but when I want to really know where I stand, rather than relying on a gauge, which is only a rough guide, and it's all right to have it there, and they're very good to tell you like what pressure's there and all that. They're really good for using. The gauges are great when you're using your torch, but when I want to find out what's left, I tend to use the weighing scales as the best method. And as I say, if I've left out anything in this, it is that thing, how accurate are the gauges on the top. I'm not going to go there at the minute. Maybe you can avoid all the weighing by doing it with the gauges, that's entirely up to you, but at least you know how to do it. Right, folks, we leave you go. Uh, it's all of them tell you, including Hobbyweld, if you're doing a lot of torch work and you're using a lot of oxygen and a lot of acetylene, the rental is the way to go because you're using it. And they're charging you that for all the cylinders and all. You're using it. You have a return on your investment put in. But for the other thing, for the person who's only doing it in odd time, the Hobbyweld is very tempting. It's very tempting. And don't be afraid to do a bit of barter there because they have a wee bit of barter. I don't know, does the money paid for renting Hobbyweld go to the local supplier or does it go to Hobbyweld company? I suspect it goes to the local supplier. And in that case, you might be able to knock them down a wee bit in their price. Asher here, look at it, you'll take 100 or you'll take whatever. You might get them down a bit. You won't get them totally down. Some of them are quite strict about it. It just depends on who you get. You can work that out yourself. Now, what I will do at some stage, hopefully, if we're all here, after all this war that's threatened and nuclear wars and everything, we look at other options for heating. And I emphasize again, you have things like polypropylene, which doesn't need any porous material. You have propane, and you have the various torches. Some of them need gas, and some of them don't. Some of them need gas, and some of them don't need gas. And oxygen gas, I mean. Some of them will burn with the oxygen in the air, and some of them need the pure oxygen to get the temperature up, and that applies to no matter what you're using. But in practice, you'll either be using propane, which is a cheap, plentiful, easily obtained, rent-free way of getting your gas for the workshop, and for furnaces and for all that sort of stuff. And melting propane is used because you couldn't use acetylene, it's too expensive. And it'll work. Propane will give you very high temperatures even with air oxygen. And when you add the oxygen in the cylinder, you get an even better product. The problem is it's not a carburizing flame, it's an oxidizing flame, and it's a wee bit trickier to use. So you have these options and we'll look at them again, but I wanted to deal with acetylene. I've enough said. I hope I've got everything right now in this. I've introduced you to the concept of Hobbyweld. There are suppliers around. I won't name names because I'm surely somebody would get thick with me for doing that. But there are a lot of them have them. A lot of the higher places have them, and you just shop around and see what best deal you can get. So I think I've supplied everything there, folks. If that's all right, give me a thumbs up and a thumbs down. And one of the problems I have here is that the camera is this side. Sometimes I put the camera the wrong way around and I'm looking this side and it's over here that the camera's recording. Please understand, that's just the limitations. But then this smartphone has a pause function, which I cannot get in a proper camera. So we'll see you back for something else. Goodbye. Thank you.